singing of the tears of our ancient mother. Every day that passes is one day less that we have to stabilize our increasingly fragile planet, by now on its way to becoming uninhabitable for humans. We are running out of time. Once we hit critical thresholds, the damage to the environment and consequently to our future on this planet will be irreparable, say Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivett-Carnac in their 2020 book, The Future We Choose: Surviving the Climate Crisis. My heart and mind were blown open this week by studying this book. These two architects of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement share what our planet will look like by 2050 if we don't act urgently. But they also offer a hopeful vision of what we can do to reverse the climate crisis if we act decisively now, as individuals and society. Now, so many of us these days especially can feel hopeless and dejected about the planet that we are leaving to future generations, to those beautiful children we had playing in the sanctuary earlier. The book cautions us that though grief about how much we've already lost is real and necessary to feel, it's vital, my friends, not to be immobilized by it. Figueres reminds us to transform our grief and hopelessness into an active anger. Anger that evolves into conviction is unstoppable, she says. Yet when it all feels overwhelming, it's easy to become complacent or ignore what's going on, isn't it? Daily living is hard enough as it is, so how can we possibly find more time, more energy, and more commitment for yet another cause? This book showed me that such an attitude right now is equivalent to denial. And when we're rapidly running out of time to save our planet, denial must not be our choice. The evidence is all around us, with the more extreme weather like the atmospheric rivers, flooding, hurricanes, droughts, and fires we experience regularly now. And in fact, according to a recent Guardian article, Ventura County is the fastest warming county in the contiguous United States. Yeah, shocking news. It has warmed by 2.62 degrees centigrade in the last century. And remember, we are trying to stop 3 degrees of warming. So we are very perilously close to that. The book reminds us the science of climate change is not a belief, a religion, or a political ideology. It presents facts that are measurable and verifiable, just as gravity exerts its force on all of us, whether we believe in it or not. Climate change is already affecting us all, no matter where we were born or where we live. We are in the critical decade, they tell us. It is no exaggeration to say that what we do regarding emissions reductions between now and 2030 will determine the quality of human life on this planet for hundreds of years to come, if not more. My friends, 6 years is all we have left. 6 years. So this is an urgent matter, one that I believe we as a spiritual community must address together. Can I hear an amen? Amen. The authors tell us that we basically have 2 scenarios. One is that the world we're currently creating leads to the warming of more than 3 degrees Celsius, and that by mid-century, human misery would be high, biodiversity would be decimated, and we'll be living in a constantly deteriorating world. They paint a bleak picture of what 2050 would look like. And frankly, it sounds horrifying. When I read that, I said, I have to get really serious about this. Much of the currently habitable world will have turned into deserts. And other parts, many major world cities, are underwater. Think New York, Miami, Amsterdam, Venice. Vast swaths of the world's population have had to migrate to the remaining habitable places, which are overcrowded and unbearably hot. If you want a compelling motivation to work towards a better future, I urge you to read their powerful chapter on the world we are creating, because the world outside in 2050 is so polluted and toxic that we can barely go outside. The other option is depicted in the world we must create, limiting warming to no more than 1.5 degrees centigrade. And this requires a massive, urgent change from us all in almost every area of life and work. And after the really depressing chapter explaining what our world will look like if we don't act, the authors mercifully show us what we can create if we choose a livable future for our children and our planet. And it is the most compelling, clear discussion on this topic that I've ever read. So I urge you to get a copy of this book. I got it from my library, and read it as soon as possible so that we can act right away together as a community towards making the positive vision of our planet happen. It's called The Future We Choose, just like this service, if you want to look it up. So what do we have to do to immediately change course and create a bright future, a future that we choose? Well, first of all, we need a huge shift in consciousness, a spiritual awakening of sorts in which we individually and collectively transform our mindset. So isn't it great that we are all here together to discuss this topic? In Gandhi's inimitable words, we need to be the change we want to see. So we need to move systemically from our exploitative, extractive, and individualistic mindset to an attitude of cooperation, regeneration, and working in harmony with one another and nature. The authors remind us to survive and thrive, we must understand ourselves to be inextricably connected to all of nature. Just like our 7th UU principle and our value of interdependence says, we need to think of ourselves as stewards of our earth and part of the earth. We, too, are the earth. Figueres and Rivet Karnak invite us to practice 3 fundamental mindsets: stubborn optimism, endless abundance, and radical regeneration. So let me go through those. To live with stubborn optimism, we must reprogram our minds to think with gritty optimism about everything we can do, not what we can't do or how much has been lost, but what we can do. We must consciously shift from our sense of helplessness and overwhelm regarding the climate to feeling empowered, knowing that every action we take is full of meaning, purpose, and will help create the greatest chapter yet of human achievement. Can you imagine if we all get together in 2050 and say, look, we did this. We created this turnaround. Every time we think our individual actions don't make a difference, we can remind ourselves of the stonemasons who methodically built the great cathedrals of the world. And though they would never see the finished artifice that might take 100 years to build, they knew that each stone they placed was important in creating this collective venture. They were part of creating beauty and meaning for generations to come, even though they never got to see it. Another way to shift our mindset to stubborn optimism is by focusing on the good news already happening around climate change. We have increased and have cheaper renewable energy sources. More countries have taken on the goal of net zero emissions by 2050 or before, and many large cities are banning fossil fuel vehicles. My friends, looking at the way we've done things in the past as a guide to the future will not help. When you try to climb a mountain, you don't keep looking back at the paths that you've already come. You look forward and up at the peak with the goal in view, with gritty optimism, no matter how hard it gets. Who's ever climbed a mountain and looked ahead up at the goal, or a hill, or a challenge? Only two of you? You don't let go of the vision that you can get there, do you? In the face of climate change, the authors say, we all have to be optimistic, not because success is guaranteed, but because failure is unthinkable. Stubborn optimism, determination, and hope are vital. And as writer and climate activist Rebecca Solnit says, hope is an axe you break down doors with in an emergency. To hope is to give yourself to the future. So we must continue to be optimistic and use active hope, my friends, which faces reality while envisioning a better world. Gandhi did this during his Salt March, and Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela stayed optimistic even in the letters they wrote from jail. They didn't know they were ever going to get out. The evolution of humanity is a story of adaptive ingenuity to the challenges of the time, and we face the greatest challenges of human history. We may be challenged beyond our currently visible capacities, but that only means that we are invited to rise to the next level of our abilities, and we can, Figueres assures us. The second mindset is one of endless abundance. And this calls us to shift from a zero-sum game, competitive, win-lose, scarcity approach to a win-win, collaborative, generous approach. At the beginning of the pandemic and after natural disasters, we see the best of humanity coming together to create and care for one another and be generous. We need to see the climate crisis as a collective emergency now from which we have to rescue one another, in which we can help one another. It is and will continue to affect us all over the world. My friends, either we all win or we will have no world left for any of us to enjoy. The third mindset they advocate for is a radical regeneration. We need to move from extracting and dominating to a mindset of personal and collective regeneration. And like I suggest almost every week in my sermons, they too recommend developing personal grounding and regenerative practices, things like meditating and yoga, gardening, from crafting to making music or cooking beautiful meals. Doing something that restores and regenerates your spirits in the midst of difficult circumstances so that we have resilience for the long haul, because we're going to need it. Coming here, too, is a regenerative practice that we do together every week. In addition to continuously revitalizing ourselves, we need to regenerate our planet. We have so harmed and decimated nature that we need to rewild and restore land now. Planting trees everywhere that we can, renewing acidified soil, re-establishing wetlands and grasslands, and regrowing coral reefs are some of the regenerative practices that we can help with. The vision of the future we choose includes a proliferation of trees planted all over the world, including in inner cities, even in concrete alleyways. Can you imagine all the concrete everywhere being planted with trees to clean our air? By choosing regeneration as a communal spiritual practice, we would help heal not only our own spirits, but those of the wider community and world. So could we together start planting trees wherever possible and help fund organizations that do? Are you game? Yeah. Could we cover our facilities and solar panels and employ rechargeable batteries to power us? Yes. I invite us to use the lens of regeneration and being a climate model for the world as we consider moving and in all our future work together. Let's think through that lens. What regenerative work could we commit to as a community, spurring each other on for the good of the whole? We can do so much more together than we can alone. The authors ask ourselves, the authors challenge us to ask ourselves the question, does our action actively contribute to humans and nature thriving together as one integrated system on the planet? If yes, green light. If not, red light. Right, stop. So in addition to these 3 crucial mindsets, the book advocates 10 key actions we must take for a regenerative future. And if you want me to send you the script for this sermon, I'm happy to do so. If you want to have the points to actually work on, just send me an email. So the first action, let go of the old world by honoring the past and then letting it go. We can thank fossil fuels for how they helped humanity develop and let them go in favor of renewable energy sources. We must release our fear of change and our tendency to blame so that we can embrace new, better ways of living and working. Secondly, face your grief, but hold a vision of the future. We will feel real grief when we witness what's to come. But no matter what happens, we must keep holding our vision of a better future. We need to get clear on our why. Why do we want to combat climate change? I want us all to have an elevator speech for that. And then use our imagination to have a clear vision of a world we want to create. Maya Angelou said, "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so you can know who you are and what you can rise from and how you can still come out of it." Number 3, very important in this election year, defend the truth. With objectivity, truth, and science under attack, we must free our minds and learn to distinguish between real science and pseudoscience. The book urges us not to give up on climate deniers, but rather arm ourselves with truth and verifiable facts to be able to share that information in a caring way with those who don't understand. Don't give up on them. Number 4, see yourself as a citizen, not as a consumer. They suggest we change our idea of what a good life is, from being able to buy anything we want and constantly upgrading to owning the latest, newest thing, and instead only buy things that are sustainable and lasting. We must change our relationship to materialism, my friends, and stop holding material wealth as a goal. What if nature became our most revered idol instead? Touching the earth, being in nature. Most importantly, eliminate waste and be sure to reduce, reuse, and recycle as much as possible, and learn to recognize what is enough. This is a hard quest for us all. I freely admit it's hard for me, changing our habits of a lifetime. Number 5, move beyond fossil fuels. Advocate for 100% renewable energy. Electrify your homes, reduce flying, minimize driving, and find alternative methods for transportation. And we have many leaders in our congregation who will be happy to explain to you how to get an electric car. Right, Brian and Spencer? Number 6, reforest the earth. Planting trees is one of the most critically urgent things we can do to reverse CO2 release into the atmosphere. One study showed that an area about the size of the entire United States is available for reforestation without interfering with either human habitation or agriculture. So there's lots of land for us to reforest. We can also boycott products and companies that contribute to deforestation. We need to allow nature to flourish and rewild it. I invite you to eat plant-based if you can. I know we have a number of leaders in this congregation that do that. And have meat-free days more often. Go out into nature as often as possible, putting your bare feet on the ground and your hands in the dirt, and appreciate the power, sanctity, and beauty of our earth. Lately, I've been getting into a habit of something called earthing, and I invite you to look that up, where the earth gives you its electromagnetic rhythms just by putting your feet in the earth. So I invite you to do that. Feel your feet on the bare ground. It is calming and connects you to this beautiful planet. Number 7, invest in a clean economy. Put your money into green investments. Support companies that are environmentally responsible and boycott those that damage our planet. Number 8, use technology responsibly. Now, AI can both help and harm us. Keep pressure on our governments and companies developing AI to do so to help humanity and stem climate change. And share what you are personally doing to reverse climate change on your social media. And tell others about your commitments. Again, if we share what we're doing as a community and individually, we can hopefully inspire others to do the same. Number 9, and this one was interesting to me, they say build gender equality. Women need to play at least an equal role in decision-making at all levels. They often lead with greater openness, willingness to collaborate, and deeper listening. So help empower women and girls worldwide. And finally, number 10, engage in politics. This year is critical, my friends. We must participate with our votes to make sure that democracies are able to address the rapidly growing existential threat from climate change. We must elect leaders who are working demonstrably on climate issues, championing emissions reductions. And we must get engaged with organizations like Citizens Climate Lobby. Raise your hand, Dick, you can talk to him about that. Or CFROG, which stands for Climate First, Replace Oil and Gas. You can talk to Gordon and Barbara about that to help bring in good climate legislation. Finally, my friends, the book warns us that future generations will most likely look back at this moment as a single most significant turning point for action. Even at this late hour, we still have a choice about our future, and therefore every action we take from this moment forward counts. Don't you want to be able to say to your children and grandchildren, when they ask you what you did to preserve our planet, that you did everything you possibly could? Anyone? I know I do. I've watched my son go in and out of depression around climate. We need to give hope to future generations. At the end of the book, they offer an action plan of what we can do right now, today, tomorrow, this week, this month, and this year, and by 2030 and 2050. I urge you to read it. My beloveds, let's work together on this. Let's create discussion groups on what we can do individually and collectively. Maybe study this book together as a congregation. I invite you to join Chalice's Climate Action Team, which is going to be meeting at the Joy Cafe in 2 weeks, right, Renee? Join them. There's just a few people there. They need all of us to join and create collective actions. Work with local organizations like CFROG and CCL. Write postcards with You the Vote today to get out the vote and promote climate agendas. You can do that in Fellowship Hall after the service. Talk with family, friends, and neighbors about what you're doing to preserve our planet for future generations. Share this sermon from YouTube with friends and family. And let's find local groups that we can partner with to plant trees and make our church home as environmentally sustainable as we can. Be consistent in changing your habits to build a lifestyle change. My friends, will you choose a positive future with me? Will you? Because we can do this. We must do this. Will you join together and join me? May it be so.